Tonight we're going on the Ghost and Gravestone tour in Boston, Massachusetts. This is put on by the Old Time Trolley, that's who you buy the tickets off of, and it may be sensitive in nature for not appropriate for small children, so please be advised.
Quantity 3, 7 p.m. for today. You came on time. Fantastic. I'm proud of you.
This ghost keeps walking around the bus, staring in the windows and scratching his hands on the side of the glass.
It's a tape though.
Hey everybody, how's it going tonight?
Oh, excellent.
Oh, good. You guys are actually talking to me rather than just staring at me. I appreciate that. So, before we go, I'm going to take a moment and yell at you about a whole bunch of different things. First things first, every single one of you, you bought a ticket for this tour. Whether you did it over there, whether you bought it online, whether you bought it somewhere random in the city of Boston, you have all received possibly one of the scariest things that exists in tourism. As, of course, a comment card. Hey, you can tell us how we're doing at our jobs. That is terrifying.
Jesus, whatever you want, just stop talking to me. Well, you're not the first. My parents were demons. My brothers and sisters, oh, demons. But I wasn't like my brothers and sisters. No. I had a purpose. Death and destruction. And I came up to Boston to do just that. But when a preacher with eyes like yours saw me for what I was, they took me with a mob and they burned me alive! Nothing. No sympathy, nothing. Just stared at me. So I didn't go up to heaven, no, I went straight down to hell where the devil cursed me to do something terrible, something horrible, something that would make me cruel and make me evil. I have to work in tourism! Ah! So here I am to tell you the stories of this city, to take you on a tour of the darker side of Boston. So everyone, let's get started. Take a look around you, because here we are in the beautiful north end of Boston. It's a great place to go. Thank you for the little cheer. Yes, it's a great place to go. Hang out, have a few laughs. But if you happen to wander off the path, if you happen to go the wrong way, you might end up in a place that horror writer H.P. Lovecraft used to write about. You see, he used to live here in the North End, and he described it as not so far as distance goes, but centuries away as the soul goes. He would write about broken gables, smashed windows, and archaic chimneys. And from there, he would describe the inhabitants of the North End, but he would not write about the people in the houses. No, that's boring. He wrote about the inhabitants that lived underneath the ground. He wrote stories about creatures that were seldom completely human, but would approach humanity in a varying degree. Their skin was sort of an unpleasant rubberiness, and they would feed on the people of the North End. They would crawl through tunnels underneath the ground, feeding on human flesh. Now I know what you're all thinking. This sounds like a story that I'm making up. And you're correct. But it was not my story, no. It was H.P. Lovecraft's 1926 story called Pickman's Model, about creatures that crawled through tunnels underneath the North End, feeding on human flesh. Now, with all good fiction, everyone, there's a little bit of fact. And there are real tunnels that go underneath the North End of Boston. These tunnels go up into the houses that are on our left. They go out into the water that's on our right. In fact, we're crossing them as we drive down these streets, but nobody knows where these tunnels come from. They could come from witches, or pirates, or spies, anything. But what I do know is this. In a moment, on your left-hand side, in a moment, don't look now. A whole group went, what? Alright, so, in a moment, on the left-hand side, you're going to see the first graveyard of this evening called Cops Hill Burial Ground. And inside that graveyard, in front of it, there are two sets of stairs. When the city of Boston was building, when they were building that second set of stairs, they accidentally broke into one of H.P. Lovecraft's tunnels, and inside, they did not find any creatures. No. No, they just found hundreds upon hundreds upon hundreds. They found piles of human remains. They found legs, arms, torsos, heads, all of them looking like they've been ripped apart, chewed on, clawed by some kind of predator. Now, no one knows where those body parts come from. But what I do know is this. When you look at those stairs, you're going to see a wall up above. And on the other side of that wall is the graveyard. And that graveyard with all of those tunnels running underneath it, well, that's going to be the first stop on our tour. But before we get there, I want you to take a look out here in just a second. So when we get on the other side of this light right here, you look out on your left, you'll see two sets of stairs. It's not the first set, it's the second one. That's where they found all those tunnels that run underneath the wall and run underneath the graveyards. That graveyard is where we're going to be going in just a moment. So if you take a look out there, you'll be able to see it now. Now when we go up, we're going to be going into the graveyard just up above, Cops Hill Burial Ground. And we're going to be doing that right about now. So everyone, when we park, watch your step as you exit the trolley and stay close to me when we go inside the graveyard. If you have something that you do not want to bring with you, like a bag or a person, you can leave them on the trolley. It will give the driver something to do while you're gone. Alright, so we're going to be pulling right over here, and we'll be heading in to Cops Hill Burial Ground. Follow me in just a moment.
Once you enter the graveyard, you have to wait for everybody to get in, and then the actor goes back and locks you in the graveyard while you tour it. A percentage of each of the tours goes to the local cemeteries that are part of the tour.
Welcome, all of you. Welcome to Cops Hill Burial Ground. Everyone, take a look around. There's over 2,300 headstones. That might seem like a lot, but that's 700 down from what there used to be. Now where would 700 headstones go? Look at them. Aren't they great? Wouldn't you want to use one of those to put your feet on at the end of the night? You could read your newspaper on it. You could eat your breakfast off of it. Because that's where the headstones went. They were pilfered, they were stolen, they were ripped out of the ground, and they were used as things around the house because they're cut into such a perfect shape. Now, as we do this tour, 3 very important things. Number 1, if you want to take pictures, go ahead. I love pictures. And number 2, you can ask as many questions as you want. But number 3 is the most important. Because if we're going to spend the next hour and a half together, we should all take some time and get to know each other. Half of you? What the hell are the rest of you afraid of?
Never thought about it.
Never thought about it. Alright, you don't really need to list them off. Alright, so it's a rhetorical question. Alright, for the half of you who are afraid of being buried alive, know this. Back in the days of Cops Hill Burial Ground, it was actually quite common for people to be buried alive. About 1 in 1,000 people would wake up one morning, they'd go to get out of bed, and they'd find cold wood right above their face. Now, if they were lucky, they were rich. They could afford to buy a bell with a rope that went down into the ground right in their hand. So if they woke up and they felt that cold wood, they could ring on that bell and pray to God that someone could hear them. But how do we know that anyone was ever buried alive? If we all dug up their bodies right now, all you'd find is a dead body in a coffin. Does anybody here know how to tell if someone's been buried alive?
Scratches.
Yeah. Way too many of you knew that. That's amazing. Scratches on the lids and the sides of the coffin. And sometimes they would scratch so hard, they would rip out their fingernails. They'd find them in the wood. Or they would break all of their fingers. They would scream so loud that their jaws would snap, would come unhinged. But that doesn't happen today, right? With all of our advanced medicine, with technology, with embalming, it's nearly impossible to accidentally bury somebody alive. But if any of you are from here, you might read the Boston Globe, and if you do, you might know that in 2001, a woman was found in the Back Bay of Boston, overdosed in her bathtub, dead. Paramedics came to check her out, but she was still dead. They carted her back to Mass General Hospital, in the meat wagon, still dead. And just as they were getting ready to embalm her, the guy that was doing the work heard a strange noise, a noise that he wasn't used to hearing. He could hear that woman breathing. That woman was this close to being buried alive. Or, if you all want to get technical, embalmed alive. I'm not sure which is worse. Think about it. Oh, this way.
Our tour guide showed us an example of where two people were buried in the same location. So how it worked was a wealthy person would die, be buried, and have a nice fancy tombstone because he could afford it. Then a poor person would die who couldn't afford a tombstone, would be buried on top of that wealthy person, and then they would have their name engraved on the top of the wealthy person's tombstone in the corner. This was a common practice back in the 1800s.
Now, this headstone right here is very unusual. Now, the writing is on the other side, but it's a little easier to see it from this angle. What's unusual about this headstone is not that it's just one. It's not two. It's three headstones that are connected. They belong to a family. George, Ruth in the middle, and Anne Worthington. The three of them are buried together. And the three of them died together. You see, George was one of the first keepers out at Boston Light, one of Boston's oldest lighthouses. And George thought he would take his family on a nice little boat ride. You see, he was an accomplished captain, and he knew the three of them would have no problem going out through the calm waters. So the three of them went out, while their youngest daughter sat on the shore and watched. She watched as that boat sailed out. She watched as that boat flipped over. And she watched as her father, her mother, and her sister all violently drowned. She never got over that. And neither did local sailors. As I mentioned before, George was an accomplished captain. There was no reason for the three of them to die out in the calm waters. So people began to say there was a curse out on Boston Light. But then, others came back, and they said, no, there's no curse out on Boston Light. Until the second keeper, a guy named Captain Saunders, was found floating, dead in the water, just 2 weeks after he started. The third keeper, don't worry everyone, he lived, despite the fact that the lighthouse burst into flames, and the poor guy was covered in second and third degree burns. Now these days, the Coast Guard, they watch Boston Light, and they've seen a man who stands on the rocks and looks out into the water. But then they'll see that same man walk up around the lighthouse, only to not be found at the top. When they see this, they open up their logbooks and they write, GW.
She was one of 13 women over 18 months to be murdered by the Boston Strangler.
Pieces of a playground, right about there. There used to be a large tree called the Hanging Elm. It's now known as the Great Elm.
They would hang criminals from the hanging elm. From the Boston Commons, we went to the Granary Cemetery.
Even the Archway itself is a symbol of the passing over from life into death. So pass over with me. Let's head over into the old Granary burial ground.
What are you people all doing here? What? You all smell so alive. Wait a second. Are you one of those tour groups? Did Anthraxicon leave you in here? Say no to a guy for dinner once and then... Well, I guess you want to be shown around. Yeah? Well, let me tell you, I'm the rat catcher. And this is the Granary burial ground. Now, why don't you come in a little closer? This is one of the oldest burial grounds in Boston. And it's got about 2,345 headstones. But many, many more bodies. Behind me, we've got something very special. We've got the monument to Benjamin Franklin's parents. He said that he wouldn't be caught dead in Boston, so he was buried in Philly. This is for his parents. At least he was nice enough to do that. Now, take a look at that thing behind you. You see that mound? That mound is called the Tomb of the Innocents. It's a place where over 600 stillborn babies are buried. Because you see, back in those days, child mortality was very high. But if you think that's sad, just keep in mind that the second leading cause of death for women of childbearing age was childbirth. What was the first leading cause of death? It was burning. Not at the stake, don't worry. But because women were so often exposed to open fires, like in the kitchen, and they had those long skirts, and they would just catch on fire. So watch out. Next time, make your husbands cook dinner. Alrighty, people. Let me show you around a little bit. You can just follow me. I love you. Right idea. So clever. So, it appears that we've come to the burial place of Paul Revere. But I have to tell you something. He's not actually buried here. He's buried right over here. This is his tomb. You see, he was a very humble man. And he died before they invented tourism. So he just wanted this small thing. After he died, people kept coming to Boston, and they built this thing so people could take pictures, like this guy with his camera thing. But I'll have you know, if you take a picture of this here grave, you might not get all that you bargained for. You might get more than you bargained for. You see, once there was a guy back in the 90s, and he decided he wanted to take a picture of this grave. So he came on over with his camera, and he set it up, and he clicked the shot, and right as he clicked the shot, somebody walked right in front of the frame. So he put down his camera to see who it was. But there was nobody there. He looked around, and in fact, the graveyard was deserted, much like it is now. Well, at least until you people showed up. And he was very confused. But it was the 90s, so he had to wait to get his pictures developed. And that's the true horror of this story. So when he did get his pictures developed, he came upon this one. he noticed something very interesting. See, indeed, there was a pair of ghostly legs in front of this picture, floating mid-air and not connected to any kind of torso. Very interesting. Now, there's a ghost haunting this grave. Is it Paul Revere? Could be. But Paul, he died a happy man. He died of natural causes. He was already in his 80s. He was well respected. He had 16 children, for Pete's sake. Which, I mean, that's a different kind of midnight ride, but still, exhausting. He also had a lot of jobs. He was a silversmith, coppersmith, bell ringer, bell caster, a lot of things. Yeah. So I don't think this is Paul Revere. I think it's someone else. I think that it's one of Paul Revere's friends. I'll tell you about it. His name was Dr. Joseph Warren. Now, back in the Revolutionary War, he was a big honcho, whatever. He was very well liked. People thought he could even be the first president of the United States of America. But he died in the Battle of Bunker Hill. You see, he was a general, and he decided to go and stand on the front lines with all his men. And the British saw him, and they recognized him, and they shot him right through the head because he was an easy target. And he died. And not only that, but they decided they should mutilate his body because, for fun, you know what I mean? It was fun and war, and you know what they say about war. And after they mutilated his body, they dumped him in a mass grave with all the others so they could rot like the rebels they were. And they did rot for about 10 months. Until Paul Revere came back into town on his horse. You know, that famous horse that rode? Yeah. So, then he came back to town. And he learned about his friend's death. It was very sad. He decided that he needed to give his friend a proper burial. So he and a couple of buddies, they trudged up to the mass grave. They got their shovels, their lanterns, and boy, oh boy, did they have fun. Yeah, they started digging. Now, this is where it gets fun. They started digging through all the flesh, and the worms, and the bones, and all that tasty stuff that you find in a mass grave after 10 months. A lot of rats. I love rats. Anyways, eventually his friends started getting bored and sick of it and disgusted, and it was taking hours. But Paul Revere, this is why I like him. Because to me this sounds like an afternoon of fun. And he kept going and going and going and going until he finally saw something. He recognized a little piece of coat. And he reached around and he picked up a jawbone. And he picked off the maggots. And he suddenly cried out triumphantly, "This is him! After all, I recognize my own work." Because not only was Paul Revere a coppersmith, a silversmith, a bellsmith, he was also a dentist. Wow, that's right. And he had just given Dr. Warren a pair of new teeth before he died, engraved with the initials P.R. So then Paul had the bones buried right here in the Granary. But after about 50 years, they were moved to the Warren family crypt. And then a little while later, they were moved again to the Forest Hill Cemetery in Jamaica Plain, where they still are. But I don't know, folks. I don't think this Warren guy was resting in peace. And if you ask me, the one who comes and haunts this grave at night is that Dr. Warren, coming to pay his respects to his dear old buddy, who came and made sure that he was properly buried. Okay, people.
Our tour guide did come back and save us from the rat lady who decided she wanted to eat us. Not really, it was all part of the skit. The Boston Gravestone tour was fantastic. We really enjoyed it. We had a great time. They went into a lot more detail than we could show in the video. They talked about the haunted hotels in the area. They discussed the highwayman and his whole story, and how when he died he had his book bound in his own human skin and had it delivered to the gentleman that actually caught him. Heard library did an inventory of all their books and found out they have 7 books that are bound in human skin, and we passed the place that actually bound those books. It's now something else, but the building still stands. So it's a very interesting tour. We really enjoyed it. We had adults only on our bus, so he gave us more of a graphic tour. So hopefully you enjoyed this video, so give us a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. If you haven't already, please hit the subscribe button. And next week we will be covering the Normandy Farms campground resort. It was more like camping instead of camping. So stay tuned and please subscribe if you haven't already. So have a great week and see you next week.